Friends, I am glad to welcome you to my channel, and in this lesson, we will draw a cylinder with you in a standing position. We will also have a cylinder in the prone position. I will tell you separately how to build it. The fact is that the structures of the standing lying cylinder are really different. My format is a 4 horizontal. This may turn out to be strange, because the cylinder in the standing position would be logical to use a vertical format, but due to the fact that the video is horizontal on YouTube, I use such a sheet and such a format. So, the cylinder. A cylinder is a figure of rotation. The figure of rotation is such figures that from whatever angle we look at them, we will have the same picture all the time. For example, a vase is round and so on. Vases, bottles, all these jugs, pots, a glass, these are all figures of rotation. In any rotation figure, we initially build a central axis. That's the first thing we need to do. Notice how I hold the pencil and how I make a straight line. You know, many people hold pencils like this. I have nothing against it, but all my life, I have been drawing exactly this position of the pencil in my hand, and I draw the line with small intermittent dashes. Not just like that, but with just such small dashes. If you have a picture in front of your eyes, then you can just take and measure how much the width of the cylinder fits in its height, and then set aside this width. Here are these proportions of width with height to set aside on your format. After we have drawn the central axis, we need to build the right face. This line will be parallel to the axis. And in the same way, you can measure the distance of the central axis. The name itself speaks for it. Yes, that is, we should have it in the center. So make sure that these 3 straight lines that you are building, they are strictly parallel to each other. Draw the center of the upper ellipse. Here you can take, and after you have drawn the center of the upper ellipse, you can take and check that we really have these segments. They should be the same. These centers that I draw are the construction lines. The center of the ellipses and the center of the cylinder itself are also the construction line. You can make these straight lines a little paler. These serifs that you draw, they can be slightly extended. This is not the bottom and not the top of our cylinder. The top will be higher and the bottom will be lower. This is the center of the ellipse. An ellipse is a circle shortened in perspective. That is, the circle that you see from above is called an ellipse. We have exactly the same circle coming from below. Then, if you have, for example, a picture in front of your eyes, you just take it in this picture and measure it. Well, let's say you have some kind of picture of a cylinder. You measure how many times the width fits in the entire height. For example, they measured it 1.5 times. In the same way, you can measure from the screen monitor if you need to take the same proportions. And there is a technique when we correlate width with height in the production of a live one that you have set yourself, right? Well, or someone put it to you, and we transfer these proportions to our work. I'm not stopping there now. Perhaps we will make a separate video on how to transfer proportions, how to build, how to measure width with height, exactly when you draw from nature, not from a picture that is downloaded from the internet, open, yes, but from nature. Well, I know that this reference, which I photographed from my cylinder, I made about 1 and 6. That is, the width fits. In the entire height. This is not the beginning of the height. Approximately somewhere here, I will have the beginning of the cylinder, and somewhere here it will end. So let's measure 1. Well, about 1 and 7, 1 and 6 we get. We postpone the distance here. That is, we will make serifs for ellipses. Let me tell you separately how we build ellipses. Well, the most common mistake in constructing ellipses is that they draw eyes like this. Here they are, with such sharp 1s or pi's. You need to remember that no matter how narrow your ellipse is, here, we will have a circle all the time. In other words, it is still a circle, shortened in perspective. In the future, there will never be any sharp corners here. You first build the center of the ellipse, its horizontal part, as it were, a horizontal straight line. Then we have a vertical straight line. Here, of course, you set the serifs. Be sure to measure so that the right half is equal to the left half. This is very important. And here they also put serifs. And here is such a moment. This distance, you will always have a little more. Why do ye think that is? Everything is correct, because there is a reduction in the future. That part is moving away from us. It is further away from us, but this part is closer to us. So it will be a little bit more this distance than this. Then we draw to the right part, we draw the left part, and in this way we get our ellipse. Well, let's try to build an ellipse together with you. Not much. There is no need to think much, that there will be some kind of distortion right there. No, just a little bit. This front half will be bigger than the one that is further away from us. Here I draw such circles too, and I'm already inscribing an arc into these 4 points that I made. I'm building with a Kiner pencil already. I got the upper ellipse. So, well, let's see what we have with the lower ellipse. Look, the lower ellipse always opens wider for our view. That is, this distance will already be wider. If it was glass, you would have seen it. If you have some kind of glass vase with 2 ellipses, look, all the time the lower plane opens up more for us, no matter what we draw. By it or something else. I can give this example with, well, let's have a separate leaf. I'll just explain why this is happening. With a shelf, for example, if this is the horizon and we have it, but look, the next shelf is already there. Here we do not see it, but the next shelf for us, for our gaze, a little plane, thickness, opens up. That's the thickness. And this is the depth of the shelf. And what's going on with the next shelf? Look. Thickness opens this width, and what size is it? It's already bigger than the thickness of this shelf here. Let's move on. See what happens to the lowest part. Look for our eyes, it opens up already with this width. That is, what do we have? What did I want to show by this? Every time here, we don't see the upper part where the books are placed. Here it opens for us quite a bit. The next shelf, which is lower, is even wider, and the next shelf is even wider. These are the principles that, in principle, all subjects obey. The lower the subject, the wider the area of our review of this subject will be revealed. Well, I hope I explained it clearly. Let's go back to our cylinder. So this is the distance, but a little bit more, not that much. Give it to me. We put this aside here and do a little less. This distance is the same here because it is closer to us. It will be slightly larger than the second part farthest from us. The half of the ellipse. Draw. I try not to press the pencil too hard here. Well, it turns out that this is such a cylinder. I circle the edges that we see a little brighter. Only what we see I circle. That is, you see, yes, we won't see this facet of it, but we are building it, as in all subjects. So, I erased everything that I had here, and now we will start hatching our cylinder. Let's build a shadow. Don't forget, they don't just take shadows from the ceiling. Shadows always repeat the shape. Yes, if a ray of light falls here, the cylinder is vertical. It is straight, then the shadow from it will also go straight. Here, we have a small table line with a slight slope like that. I will also pass it under a slight bias. The shadow collides with the line of the table, and bends a little at us. So, here's a cylinder like this. We got a cylinder. Let me start hatching it. Well, what can I say about hatching? Let's say a few words about how I stroke. Hatching should be hatching. This is the most important thing that you should understand. It seems to sound like that. Yes, it is clear that hatching. There must be hatching. But the fact is that a lot of novice draftsmen, they like, to paint over. So they paint over it, and then, on top of everything else, rub it with their finger. And now it seems to them that it is so necessary, that it is great, that it is so competent. No, nothing like that need to be hatched. The stroke should breathe. That is, there should be some gap between the strokes. There are at least two shading on one plane. These can be different directions. You can hatch like this, you can shade like this, you can shade two shading patterns. For example, choose like this. You can choose two shading patterns like this. But the only thing, I would not recommend novice draftsmen to stroke exactly the lattice. It's not very easy to draw. There is no strong trouble in this. In the future, you will probably be able to hatch like that, but still a more noble hatching and more. It turns out to be so plastic when we don't have squares in the middle, namely rhombuses, here. And let's have a hatching canvas. How should it go? You stroke a row. Well, first of all, what kind of stroke? It's not just that it's such a log at the beginning, at the end, and the shading maximum pressure of the pencil falls on the center of the stroke. So, it means that each stroke begins and ends like the tip of a hair under a microscope. Thinner, thinner and thinner, but ideally it should be like this. In fact, I'm already hatching. I don't think about it. So just stroke. It's okay if from the very beginning you will see rows of hatching. That is, you have shaded a row, draw the next row, and each time you have a row visible, but ideally, the rows should not be visible. So how do we do this? We just, for example, conduct a series of hatching. I have shaded a row, and I start the next row of hatching from the center of the first row. And I also start the next row of hatching from the center of the second row. And so on. This is one shading. I need to apply at least two, so I put the next stroke. I put a series of strokes. I start from the middle of the top row. The next row of hatching. Shaded it. I start the next row from the middle of the second row and lead as well. And so on. And in this way, I get a smooth canvas. Hatching. And it is no longer clear where I had the beginning, where the end is, where the end is, how many rows there are, and so on. Here we need to try to do so. All right, let's get down to hatching. I'll try to shade it quickly. Near the face, I stroke along the face. In the direction of this face, I stroke about at least a centimeter from the edge, and then I gently gradually weaken the pressure of the hatching and bring it to naught. Note that there is an edge contrast here. Edge contrast is when the plane, no matter flat or round, as in this case, we have even more darkened to the light side, and the cylinder, it doesn't just go from light to dark, it's light here, partial shade, a small shadow. Here a little more pronounced, as if so straight if you look closely. Then, here, a small light falls on a white table, and a small light reflex is reflected here. And then, we have a shadow again, and a straight, deep, saturated shadow at the end, and it intensifies upwards. That is what I want to say. The tone of the cylinder changes not only like this in a circle penumbra shadow reflex, penumbra shadow, deep shadow, but also changes from top to bottom. There is such a thing, yes, as the edge contrast in a hexagon. We'll probably talk about it in a little more detail. When it is saturated, it increases upwards. That is, if we look at what we have here, yes, the saturation of darkness, and what it is here, then we will see it will be more. It will be more. It's the same here. If we look here and here, it will be darker here. It will gradually darken up. This shadow increases. And now, we are going to try to convey all this in our hatching. I chose the second hatching, exactly like this diagonally. I don't go close to the A, so as not to drive over the A edge. About half a centimeter from here, I retreated, and stroke this hatching completely without bringing it to the edge. Next row. Also starting from the center of that row. Here I have a smooth hatching goes to knot. Here I will also try to smoothly, very easily pressing on the pencil to nullify my hatching. This, of course, is not the final option. This is far from the final version of hatching. We are going to saturate all of this now. This is some kind of substrate. Well, here's the next row even more easily. I'm making a stroke. I try to stroke the shape. The shadow expands a little here. I am expanding the direction in the same way. I have a little bit of a stroke that also repeats the shape of the object I'm drawing. But in this case, it's not an object, it's a shadow, yes, it's a table. From the table we have, there comes out such a pronounced black shadow from the table. Well, as I said, if you look closely, there is a certain dark stripe here. Not directly on a clear strip. It is clear that our edges are gently wound up here and here. Right-left shaded. I'm also going to do this, but I'm going to try to convey this strip now. Upward is the darkening. It becomes even darker. That is, to the bottom. Here I am now hatching, but I am already doing it more pallidly. In fact, in no plaster object will it be so that one plane will be straight of an even tone of some kind. No, all the time all these iridescences, highlights, reflections, reflexes, shadows, edge contrasts. And don't treat the plaster as just some kind of white. Some kind of white plane in no plane, so that you don't stroke a cube, a cylinder, a hexagon, a cone. There are no straight monotonous flat planes. Now, if you look at the top of the cylinder, at this circle, the ellipse in this case, you also see it. It darkens to the left. It becomes a little lighter to the right. This should also be taken into account. So, let me switch to the shadow a little bit, I guess. A small shadow in the shade. In general, I got several light sources here. Therefore, there will be shadows. I put it under my arm so as not to dirty the work, and there will be more shadows than one. I took a pencil 3B, and already with a pencil 3B, I am shading the darkest places. Also, in such planes it is round. Yes, we have a cylinder plane, we can have a stroke also semicircular. Here's how we have an ellipse going here, here's a semicircular stroke maybe. The same goes for the cone, the ball. You know, very often ellipses for some reason want to shade it exactly this way, for example, an ellipse, and you stroke it like this in a circle. That's not right. It turns out to be such a funnel. An ellipse, it's not round, it's flat. That is, this plane, it is flat. And this means that we need to stroke the ellipses only with straight lines. Straight lines, so that it turns out to be flat. Well, as I said, it darkens to the left. To the dark side, the ellipse is highlighted, the plane is highlighted. That's what we did. I chose two shading, strictly horizontal and inclined second slot. I'm currently shading the right edge as dark as possible. Here, pay attention, it's also quite saturated there, and I press 3B with a pencil as much as possible. I get the tone. I bring it to the right saturation. Also, as you understand, I have a lot of layering, a lot of shading in different directions, but mostly it's vertical, horizontal, semicircular slightly, and here's such a slant. These are about hatching. So this is a juicy dark shadow under the tablet. I will also highlight it darker. And in general, I now want to pick up the tone of the shadows. Well, that's the lesson we got. Thank you very much for watching. Please write your comments, what you liked, what you didn't like, what questions you have asked. I will definitely answer as much as possible. Have a nice day.